Why is Dark Souls? Dark Souls is a massively popular single-player, third-person adventure role-playing fantasy torture simulator franchise created by the developer From Software since 2011. Known for being so difficult that even professional game journalists are unable to beat the series, which isn't that surprising. And also known for having one of the most stomach-turning, tear-jerking worlds ever to enter the gaming industry. And in another year, the studio will be releasing their next AAA release with a hype train equal to Cyberpunk or No Man's Sky. But how did a game franchise with such a frightening reputation develop one of the most loyal fan bases in the industry? Even through the rise of the Battle Royale's multiplayer-focused games like Fortnite and infinite experiences in games like Minecraft, even the greatest AAA titles have had to turn their games into clones of what's popular. But despite the never-ending hellscape of loot boxes and battle passes, Dark Souls hasn't had to change their course in a decade. Why? Why is it so popular? Why does a series of games that laugh endlessly at this joke, considered masterpieces of not just gaming but actual art? To come to some understanding of the game's philosophy, we should take a look at what inspired the franchise. The lead developer of From Software, Miyazaki, has been on record to say several pop culture things have inspired smaller parts of the Dark Souls trilogy. Things like Harry Potter, Avatar, 90s professional wrestling, Dragon Pass, and the very quickly written dungeon crawl fantasy books of the late 1980s. However, there are two other things that heavily inspired Dark Souls' creator: mangas and locations. Let's start with locations because they are probably the most literal in their inspirations. Miyazaki wanted the game's player to feel like the game's world is enormous. To do this, not only did the dev team create enormous set pieces and giant character models, but they also took several types of architecture from around the world, as seen in these images. This was to help the player feel like they are traveling to a new nation at every point in the games. But literature is a whole other beast when talking about Miyazaki's inspirations. Probably the two most obvious to any Dark Souls player are mangas and H.P. Lovecraft. Lovecraft's works such as Call of Cthulhu and Mouth of Madness take center stage in both themes and imagery in the Dark Souls franchise. This is more prevalent in Bloodborne, but that is a whole other video. Let's just be happy that not all of Lovecraft's themes were translated into Dark Souls, especially with any cat characters. But taking the center stage, no manga was more inspirational to Dark Souls than that of Berserk, a manga series with the same reputation as Dark Souls: brutal, violent, and horror-filled. To quickly summarize Berserk, it's about a mercenary who was cursed by evil demons, carries an enormous greatsword, and wears cool armor to kill enormous monsters. Sound familiar? It better, because it's the exact same thing as Dark Souls. Anyway, sprinkle in a little gore, child murder, child rape, regular rape, horse rape, and dialogue so edgy you would have thought it came from a high schooler's manifesto, then you get a small taste of what Berserk is really like. But why am I even talking about it? Well, it's because Dark Souls' philosophy is just the abstract of Berserk's philosophy, and that is the idea of struggle. Even the nickname given to the main character of the manga is the Struggler. Struggle's dictionary definition is make forceful or violent efforts to get free of restraint or constriction. Take note of the language used here. In both Berserk and Dark Souls, violence is used to literally free the main protagonist from a literal constriction placed on them in the form of some curse. In Berserk, it's the brand of sacrifice, and in the Dark Souls trilogy, it's the Dark Sigil. Unfortunately, that's where these properties split up because Berserk still has characters and lots of dialogue to hammer home the story's themes and meanings. Which means now we get to talk about a giant elephant in the room. Dark Souls, on the other hand, is memed for having almost no meaning. If Dark Souls had no meaning, then why do millions of loyal players spend their money just to push their anxiety to the absolute human limit just for armor that makes you look like a Discord moderator? Well, let me ask you this. What is the story of each Dark Souls game? Unless you are super horny about reading essay-long item descriptions, then your casual player will probably just shrug. Dark Souls 1 has kinda a Chosen One prophecy, and Dark Souls 3 has the idea of the Ashen One, and when you ask Dark Souls 2 for its story, or anything for that matter, it's just like... And to be honest, none of them give anything substantial other than maybe a few lines of dialogue to give the player a vague sense of what the fuck they are supposed to be even doing. So if it's not the story that makes them so popular, then what else could it be? It's the series difficulty that I believe is what tells the player what they are supposed to get from the games. Because if the idea the game wants to take from Berserk and repackage for the player is the concept of struggle, and you have games with barely any story, characters, or dialogue, then you kinda only have one way to give the player the idea, and that is to make the game a struggle for the player. The thrill of combat, the sense of adventure, and the struggle of dying over and over again only to stand back up and fight again and again. But where in the history of philosophy has this idea of struggle come up before? Well, two prominent philosophers come to mind: utilitarian John Stuart Mill, and every college student's waifu Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche wrote about struggle in his book The Will to Power, in which he imagines how our greatest achievements in life are born from our greatest hardships in that same life. When discussing what types of followers his ideas would create, Friedrich wrote, "To those human beings who are of my concern to me, I wish suffering, desolation, sickness, ill treatment, indignities. I wish that they should not remain unfamiliar with profound self-contempt, the torture of self-mistrust, the wretchedness of the vanquished. I have no pity for them, because I wish them the only thing that can prove today whether one is worth anything or not, that which one endures." If you don't speak philosopher jargon, then this quote means, the test of one's decency is how much of a fight one can put up after one has stopped caring. John Stuart Mill also wrote about the idea of struggle in his autobiography. Mill tells us that his crisis was born in a concern about whether happiness is really possible and the utopia utilitarian ideas would achieve. In other words, Mill wanted a world without pain and struggle, but just by getting rid of pain and struggle, the utopian system would ironically create another form of pain and struggle. In his book, he wrote, "The question was whether, if the reformers of society and government could succeed in their objects, and every person in the community were free and in a state of physical comfort, the pleasures of life being no longer kept up by struggle and privation, would in fact cease to be pleasures themselves." Take this for example. A developer creates the perfect video game that appeals to everyone and at every age. But the game's mechanics and difficulty never changes, no matter how long you play. It would get really boring because there isn't anything to challenge you after you have reached a comfortable skill level to successfully play the game. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, who may be most known for being one of the most depressing philosophers of his generation, also jumped in on this idea that if humans are given all the pleasures we want, we would just become bored. And boredom to humans is one of the worst tortures in life. Quote, "Life swings back and forth on a pendulum between absolute pain and absolute boredom." There have been several cultures throughout history who have leaned towards this philosophy that struggle in physical, mental, and spiritual ways is what gives humans a purpose. After all, it's because of this that humans have survived natural selection for thousands of years. Japanese culture labels this idea of betterment through struggle as honorable, and try to apply it to anything you want to master. In Viking culture, the idea of struggling in this lifetime was used as an incentive in order to make it to Valhalla, and even in death, these people's spirits would live on forever fighting and dying over and over again, to avoid this type of boredom. Hell, even in today's internet age, there is still this idea of the grind, or the grind set, where people want to show off how much better they are than others because they put themselves through hell in order to get what they want in life. Dark Souls is much like this. I've seen several Reddit pages and 4chan threads where a random game will be described as difficult, and it won't be long until the Dark Souls fans will be boasting about how difficult Dark Souls is and how much better they are than you because they mastered a harder game. If you want more proof of this, look no further than the gaming term GG, which in most massive multiplayers like League and Dota would refer to as good game. But when you get killed by a better player in Dark Souls PvP, or hell, even just asking a question about game mechanics on Dark Souls forums will elicit this response: get good. A two-word slogan that basically tells you everything you need to know about what Dark Souls is as a game. I believe this is what has made the community around Dark Souls so strong and unique. It's a game that when you beat a tough boss, it rewards you with just another tough boss. And players that recognize other players tend to give each other that respect you would see veterans give each other. That slight acknowledgement that you are or were a struggler in the Dark Souls games is more satisfactory than any character skin or scoreboard ranking most AAA releases can give you. Now, I want to mention that my interpretation of the trilogy's meaning is for the games as presented. If one was to sit through the hours of complicated lore in Dark Souls, then there are lots of philosophical conclusions people could get to. But just at the base game, I believe the ideas around struggle is what the creators wanted to give to the player. A chance to feel small but fight something so much bigger than yourself in more or less a realistic way. In games like God of War and Monster Hunter, fighting a monster the size of a skyscraper is normally limited to a choreographed cinematic movie with some quick time elements. But Dark Souls doesn't have anything like that. Like everything in these games, the general instructions the game gives for enormous boss fights is fuck you. There's a sort of personality and charm to a video game that instead of teaching you how to float in the shallow end, it decides to just throw you head first into the deep end and let you decide whether you want to keep playing or not. Despite all my pessimism for this trilogy, I do truly love these games. But at this point when I defend them, I feel more like a battered housewife defending her abusive husband by saying things like, "Oh, I don't care if he beats me, I know he loves me deep down." And it wasn't until introducing one of my friends to this series that I began to question why us players even bother going through this shit. Or better yet, why push it onto other people by saying it is one of the greatest games you'll ever play? The answer sort of came to me while writing this video script. It's that it's for the achievement, that feeling you get when you do something that seemed impossible. The harder the boss, the more popular that boss is with the fan base because of how much time and effort they put into mastering their skills in the game. And I think that is what Dark Souls is all about. Anyway, that's my thoughts on why is Dark Souls. Let me know down below in the comments what your experiences are with these games. And if you like this video, then smash that like button and subscribe for more content. Pagan Valley is about to reach that 1,000 subscriber milestone, and I'd really appreciate it if you would help out. With that, I will see you all in the next one.